I'm going to start with a moment of prayer. We take deep breaths now, coming into the presence of God, into the presence of light and freedom and hope. We breathe, knowing that we are made in the image of God, and therefore our breath is sacred. Amen. And we will begin. So today's text is 2 Corinthians 4, 1 through 10. And I'm going to be reading Bentley David Hart's translation of it because I think it's really cool. Therefore, I have this ministry as recipients of mercy. We do not grow weary, but rather we have renounced the things hidden in shame, neither proceeding by guile nor falsifying God's word, instead by making truth manifest. We commend ourselves before God and every human conscience. And if our good tidings have been veiled, they have been veiled for those who are perishing, those in whom the God of this age blinded through thoughts of the faithless, so that the illumination of the good things of the glory of the anointed, he who is God's image, should not shine out. For we proclaim not ourselves, but Jesus, the anointed, as Lord, and ourselves as your slaves for Jesus' sake, because the God who says, "Light shall shine out of darkness," is the one who has shone in our hearts for illumination of the knowledge of God's glory in the face of the anointed. But we have this treasure in vessels of clay, so that power's excellence might be God's and not come from me, not come from us. In every way afflicted, yet not crushed, perplexed, yet not despairing, persecuted, yet not forsaken, cast down, but not perishing, always bearing in the body the dying of Jesus, so that Jesus' life might be made manifest in our mortal flesh. And scripture reading. So let's get down to it. 2020. It's going to be known as one of the darkest eras of the 21st century. A powerful statement, but a very real one. None of us were prepared for the overwhelming powerlessness that a deadly pandemic has brought us. My skin craves the sun and misses the smell of salt water from the beach. I haven't had human contact in over 6 weeks, other than on a screen. And there are times when I hear my mom's voice on the phone and I am brought to tears. Powerlessness over our own life that is highlighted by forced isolation. It's a darkness of its own kind. A darkness that the poor, the marginalized, the sick, and the imprisoned have endured many times over before us. The Apostle Paul knew a few things about powerlessness, darkness, and forced isolation. We see this in 2 Corinthians 4, as Paul is dealing with the fact that he does not have the credibility of the other theologians at that time that are competing against him. He has no letters of recommendation like the others do. He is poor, and he is imprisoned and considered a common day criminal. And yet, he desires to bring the truth of who God is to people. And yet, the only thing that Paul can offer is his devotion to God and to God's people. Paul is facing a deep sense of powerlessness within the standards that society deems he is worthy enough to speak about God. But yet, Paul asserts his own sense and place of power by relying solely on his ability to let the light of God shine through. And he lets that light shine through him and through all of God's people. This is what God does. God switches human concepts of power and turns them on their head. He speaks through criminals and misfits rather than kings and rich men. As we are all facing our own sense of powerlessness, I want you to look around the room right now. Look at yourself, your hands, your legs. Feel the air in your lungs. Touch your face. You're still here. The worst things that you have endured in life have passed or are passing, and you are still here. God is not done with you yet. Here in your powerlessness, the image of God is shining brightly and carrying you forward. In a world where you cannot leave your house, a terrifying illness seems to be lurking at every corner. And when finances are especially hard, maybe you've lost your job. And we look and see men and women in power making choices that could affect our lives in long-lasting, serious ways. And sometimes we can't help but wonder, where is the hope of God amidst this? Yet, even here, God is with you, proving that you are made in the sacred image of God. And you do not need the power that you thought you did to endure the darkness of existence, because you are still here and the power of God is within you. As someone who has faced her fair share of dark nights of the soul, I'm gonna be honest, I sometimes found Paul's encouragement of endurance to fall flat at my feet. I have felt afflicted and crushed. I have been perplexed and I have despaired. I have been hurt by others and felt completely forsaken. And I'm certain every one of you has felt this way before. When darkness surrounds, the hope of tomorrow seems to fade with each ticking moment. it can feel stifling, choking. And the imagination that once filled us with ideas of hope of tomorrow has lost traction. We've all been there. Maybe you're there right now. This pandemic can, in so many ways, feel like a dark and unending night. But what if Paul is not advocating for some toxic form of good vibes only, but reminding us that there would be no light without dark, no life without death? On the day that Jesus died, the sky turned black. A light that had shone so brightly was put out in a number of hours. Jesus experienced the darkness of night and death. And yet 3 days later, the sun returned and Jesus once again breathed life. Darkness did not last forever. What if the hope that we have is that we are made in the same image of God that Jesus was? That no amount of darkness and what feels like death can overwhelm us forever. You are still here, God is still here, and the darkness will not have the final say over your life or mine. Thank you.